think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's a cold one, isn't it? Boy, it's cold. Cold weather. What's the high today? Something like 30 or 31? My goodness. Hey, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. Well, we got a lot to get to today. A lot of interesting developments that have happened. We're going to get to the comments of John Brummett at some point in the show. Did you hear about this? Liberal columnist John Brummett for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. He was asked by Roby Brock at talkbusiness.net and Talk Business and Politics. He was asked, hey, the governor's son and him going to China, is this a story that we should be paying more attention to? Is this a story we should be paying more attention to? Well, yeah. I mean, it should be everywhere. It should be on every single website that claims to cover Arkansas news, and it's barely anywhere.
Every town crier should cover it.
It's barely anywhere. I just think to myself, I mean, I'm now wanting the story in and of itself, and I fully expect to see more on this. The story in and of itself now is why the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette refuses to cover this. Joe, show the front page of Arkansas Online this morning. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, you didn't know. You thought it was just yeah. So you didn't know that. You thought it was just the holder page or whatever. So yeah, here it is. This is the front page, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Little Rock School District Teachers Union set for one-day strike. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that that's not news. As a matter of fact, we're going to be covering that news coming up at the bottom of this hour. We're going to be talking with Laurie Lee on this issue because on Thursday, the teachers, the people who are pro-teachers union are going to strike and go down to the Capitol and blah, 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 blah. And what they don't understand is they're putting politics ahead of their students. And so we're going to talk to Laurie Lee about this. And on Thursday, by the way, I'm pretty sure that they would welcome all the support from people who actually, are against these teachers' unions, or the teachers' union. And, I think some conservatives need to go down there and hold signs that say something to the effect of, put kids before politics. You guys go back to work. Go back to work and teach. But hey, maybe you have a different opinion. But that's the front page. Nothing about China, nothing about ASA 3, nothing about the governor's law firm servicing the same Chinese communist entities that he's given taxpayer money for them to move here. Nothing whatsoever. So now the question is, why? Why? Or at least nothing that I've seen, Yeah, I mean, you've got the Gazette compiling staff reports that they gathered from wire reports on the police shooting of this Hong Kong dissident, or not dissident, protester at point blank range. They'll talk about that kind of stuff, but they're not going to talk about the elephant in the room. This is, absolutely shameful. Now, you've got some other websites that Arkansas Business. I was like, well, why hasn't Arkansas Business, which is a respected publication here in the state, a lot of people read it, why hasn't Arkansas Business done a story on this? Well, I don't know if you guys watch the ads that scroll across certain websites. But if you will watch, I think Talk Business has ads from the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. I think Arkansas Business gets ads. So you've got the Arkansas Economic Development Commission that, they're paying for ad placement in some of these state news publications, and so they are incentivized. They are incentivized to not cover what is apparent corruption within our own government, especially if it has to do with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and Asa Hutchinson and the governor's son and the governor's law firm and these Chinese communist entities. So, in other news, actually, no, it's not other news. We're going to stay on this topic. Go to the Google search. So, yesterday I showed you at the top of the show, I've been keeping track of Asa Hutchinson in the news because I want to know if there's any other mainstream media outlets besides the local ABC affiliate, KATV, who's going to cover the story about the governor's law firm taking money from communist Chinese entities that are the same ones he's awarded taxpayer dollars to. The governor's son going on a trip, meeting with one of those clients as the managing partner of that law firm with the governor right next to him. It is exactly like Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. Oh, actually, it's worse. Can you imagine instead of the story was Joe Biden's son Hunter used his daddy's connections to get $50,000 a month to be put on the board of a company? Can you imagine if it was the Joe Biden Law Group and Hunter Biden was the managing director going on trips, and we found out that the businesses that Joe Biden was awarding money to were then clients of Hunter Biden's at the Joe Biden Law Group? It would be much worse and much more transparently something that's wrong and unethical. Here is the Google page. Go to Google and you just search for Asa Hutchinson. This is what comes up. There's a new hit. So you have 4 days ago, is the governor of Arkansas' son benefiting from his father's position? That was the latest hit. That's been the top hit for the last 4 days. The only mainstream media outlet to cover this. Now we have a new one from ABC News. Well, that's weird. KATV is an ABC affiliate. Now we have a new hit from the national site, ABC News. It's a transcript posted 3 hours ago. Arkansas governor was on a podcast. Now, what kind of podcast? Well, look at this, Joe. Show him the podcast. It's called The Investigation. And this is how they describe this. They got 48 episodes. This is a far left-wing podcast about Donald Trump and his impeachment and the investigation. It's one of the rarest political events in American history, one that only 3 presidents have ever experienced before today. Just months after the release of the special counsel Robert Mueller's report, the White House finds itself under fire from a new front, an impeachment inquiry. Who was on that July 25th call between President Trump and President Zelensky? What was promised and who was pressured and blah, 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 blah. So for some reason, they decide to reach out to Governor Asa Hutchinson. Well, I mean, the reason they claim is because Asa was the House manager during the impeachment on Bill Clinton. And so I just find it really odd. It seems like anytime the governor, and by the way, the title of the podcast that Asa was on is called, quote, a very troublesome telephone call. Now, who said that? Well, that's what Asa said. Asa said that the call was very troublesome. I'm gonna play some excerpts for you here in a minute. It's not all bad, but it's very hypocritical when he starts. Asa here admits that there is actual corruption in Ukraine, and these guys have no idea. The guys interview him have no idea about what he and his son have done in China. It's so funny. But I got to make this observation. It seems like to me, anytime Asa has some legitimate criticism from the mainstream media that's going out there, there are media connections that the governor has. It's from his time in Washington, D.C., or his time in the Bush administration. I'm not really sure, but he's got a long career in politics. Every time there's negative press about Asa, we get some phony poll like, oh, Asa Hutchinson, the third most popular governor in America, or you get something about, you get something in the Wall Street Journal about how great Asa Hutchinson is, or you'll get, there was one on, the NBC News. NBC News let Asa Hutchinson write an op-ed about how awesome it is that China's investing billions of dollars in Arkansas. Now that article, by the way, is going to be very ironic one day. So this always tends to happen. Now, I'm not really sure if that's the case here, but I do find it odd. I'm sitting here, got Google alerts on the governor's name just because I want to know, when is the mainstream media going to cover what is a huge story? Crickets. Crickets. Except for that KATV article. So, let me just kind of set this up for you, okay? We have the governor who's being interviewed here on this podcast. Again, it's called The Investigation, right? It's giving the legitimacy to giving legitimacy to this phony impeachment scam. Absolutely. So, question by the producer of ABC, or a producer at ABC by the last name of Vlasto. If you were advising Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, what would you tell them to do? Here's Asa's response.
It does. I mean, it's all about the public attitude toward it.
Number one.
Of course, I would not do that, nor would I be invited to do that. But what we know from history is that you cannot impeach a sitting president without the support of the American public. You cannot gain the support of the American public unless they're convinced of the fairness of the process that you're proceeding by. And then secondly, you're not going to gain the confidence of the American public without having public testimony. Now, they're moving into that phase, but you've got to keep those two things in mind, that nothing can be accomplished, nothing can be done without the support of the American public. And the first way that you start is by showing it's a fair process, and that should be the guiding light as you go into the public hearings.
All right, so he's saying, hey, Republicans, you gotta make sure it's a fair process. Okay, I think you go into the public hearings. There's one fundamental question: why? Why? Here's the next. So that's what he would say if he was advising Nancy Pelosi, that it's got to be a fair process. Then the producer goes on. But the difference of today versus 20 years ago, when you guys went forward with the impeachment of President Clinton, his popularity was soaring. He had, I think, a 70% approval rating around the country. It appears that, Donald Trump's popularity, especially with the support for impeachment, popularity is only in the 40%, and recent polls put the American people at almost 50% saying they support the inquiry, which is totally bogus, though. 50% of the people do not support this witch hunt. Does that make it difficult for Republicans? Asa Hutchinson says...
It does. I mean, it's all about the public attitude toward it. I think it puts the Republicans in a precarious position because as you go into the public hearings, it's not going to be enough to attack the process. I think you also have to address the substance of the charges, and you don't want to spend all of your time just creating a atmosphere that this is unfair. For example, I think as you go into the public hearing, there's one fundamental question. Why was there a delay in getting the funds for Ukraine? Well, the natural response is there's a national security interest, and there was corruption in Ukraine that the president wanted to address. Well, you can call witnesses on that substantive point, and where you're treating the process seriously, the allegations seriously, you can attack the process, but you also have to get in there and address the substantive questions that the American people will be thinking about.
What kind of corruption in Ukraine, Governor? What kind of corruption was the president trying to address? I mean, it was obviously the Democrats, 2016, the server, CrowdStrike. They didn't turn it over to the FBI, all odd stuff. But it was also, when Joe and Hunter Biden were mentioned, what was it? What was it that Joe and Hunter Biden were doing in Ukraine that was such a big deal? I mean, can you believe these guys have no idea, these guys who are doing this podcast, or maybe they do know. Maybe they do know. But, I mean, this is nuts. ABC News, in this podcast, again, this left-wing podcast called The Investigation. Again, ABC News. By the way, ABC News. We had it all 3 years ago, suppressing the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. We had it all 3 years ago. ABC News tried to get us in more involved in Syria in the war there by showing us fake footage, claiming that it was a bombing at the border of Turkey and Syria, and it turned out to be that it was a fake. And they had to crop that. They had to edit it. Literally, the ABC News, to call it propaganda isn't even, it doesn't do it justice. I mean, these people are sick, really. And they're serving not what is the news, what is objective. They're serving something else. They're serving an interest that is in the shadows because the deep state is losing control right now. And this is, and so, I mean, just want to point that out. ABC News, the question asked to Governor Hutchinson on this podcast, but when you look at that call itself of the president, how do you see that call? Governor Asa Hutchinson says.
But when you look at that call itself of the president, how do you see that call?
Well, it's an unwise call.
Stop. The reason I left Vlasto's voice in there, this producer at ABC News running the podcast, is because there is a clear, I want to be honest with you guys, okay? Transparent, because I don't know how this is going to shake out. There is a clear edit there. However, the governor answered that question originally, it was edited. And we're going to take the clip at the top again, but that's why I left the guy's voice in there, the interviewers, because between the end of his sentence, I know audio edits, I've edited enough of it, and I know there was something in front of what the first thing that we see. It could just be a breath, but it's certainly a hard cut. Just wanted to let you guys know that. All right, go ahead.
But when you look at that call itself of the president, how do you see that call?
Well, it's an unwise call. You should not. The president should not be addressing the political atmosphere in the United States of America or a political opponent in a call with a foreign leader. But substantively, you got to go deeper than that. There was corruption in Ukraine. It is a legitimate issue for the United States to be concerned about if there's corruption there. And so while it might not have been appropriately expressed, it might have been a bad call, there is still a significant question as to whether the funds to Ukraine that are important for national security issues, whether there was an overriding concern about corruption. Was that being raised by the Department of Justice, by the CIA? Those are fact questions that can be addressed. So my reaction is very negative toward the call, but that doesn't mean that a president ought to be impeached. It doesn't mean he ought to be removed from office. I think there's some very deep constitutional questions that need to be probed.
There you go. Now, is that cut 3, Joe? Yeah. Okay, so then we get to cut 4 here. He's asked about the whistleblower, and he mentions the whistleblower. Listen to this.
Well, there's some statutory protections for whistleblowers, but anybody who tries to take down the President of the United States should know that that's not going to be a private matter. They were relating, the whistleblower was relating things that had been reported to them. I don't see how that can be ultimately protected in the end. I think that if they move forward with an impeachment process, the American public, in a sense of fairness, will want to say we ought to hear from the whistleblower. We ought to be able to weigh the credibility of these witnesses ourselves.
Isn't the whistleblower kind of pointless now because we have firsthand witnesses who are going to be testifying who are actually on the call, and he or she was a second-hand witness?
I agree with that. But I do think that, the motivation does weigh in here in terms of credibility. You have any witness before a jury, and it's appropriate cross-examination to go after their motive. And this all started with the whistleblower. And so, again, while all of that testimony can be covered by someone else who saw it firsthand, there still is some relevance in the overall picture as to motivation,
right,
whether it's politically motivated or not.
All right, so I
think the American public,
hang on.
you can get by perhaps with not doing it, but I think that the American public will want to see that and will demand it.
All right, so that's Governor Asa Hutchinson. It's on this left-wing podcast called The Investigation, ABC News podcast, and they are probing this. Now, we're in the process of pulling this additional audio from it. I wanted you to hear it. Here's the question. How does the process work as far as deciding what articles would qualify in their eyes for impeachment? Because right now, our reporting suggests that Democrats are considering possibly as many as 3 articles of impeachment against the president, a lot of that negotiation, if you will. Those are things the American people may not see, right? Governor Hutchinson, quote, well, they won't see the negotiations behind closed doors, but I think it's actually premature to know what they will address. Whether there's any obstruction that may be articulated in article or whether there is simply the telephone call in and of itself and the concern about misusing the powers of the presidency. Let me make it clear that what I've seen yet is a very troublesome telephone call, but I have not seen anything yet that would lead me to believe you should remove the president from office. So we have a continuation, really, of what the governor's feelings on this were a couple of weeks ago reported in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. The phone call is unwise. They should pursue and he kept saying the Republicans need to pursue the substance and basically debunk it. The whole thing is a sham to begin with, okay? But really not a lot of movement here. Again, it's interesting. If you Google Asa Hutchinson's name and you click on the news portion of Google, this is now the #1 hit because it came out today. The governor on this left-wing podcast, they called The Investigation, and one of the rarest political events in American history. We're going to take a break for 1 minute. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a second. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're up against the hard break. 1 minute. I went too long on all of this. But when we come back, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some protests that are scheduled for Thursday, or a teacher strike, actually. We got teachers in Little Rock going to walk out on Thursday. We'll tell you what you might want to do about that. If you think that's ridiculous, like I do, we'll tell you what you can do about it next.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Enhance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
On the front page, Arkansas Democrat Gazette, Cynthia Howell, Little Rock School District Teachers Union set for strike. One-day strike on Thursday. What is this all about? We go now to Laurie Lee with the Reform Alliance. Laurie, how are you this morning?
You know what, Paul? I'm doing good. I'm just a little sad and frustrated for our kids and our families and some of our teachers in the Little Rock School District.
So, I mean, I get it. I know. I've been watching all the headlines. I know that the teachers union, they don't want the status quo to change, but it's going to change. And now they're going to take time off of their jobs, but not actually time off. They're just going to walk out and strike. I mean, I think a lot of Arkansans just are like, what are you doing, you know?
So here's the bottom line. The teachers union was decertified. They lost their contract their last day. This is ironic, was Halloween, was October 31st. So that was the last day that they were certified. So now, because the teachers don't want them, the parents don't want them, the state doesn't want them, they're throwing a fit. And what they're saying is, we want our power back. This is 100%. The only demand, if you will, that they have is they want their power back. They want to be certified again. And that's what this is over. This is a political agenda. This is taking there are 21,000 children that are in the Little Rock School District. So on Thursday, 21,000 children and their families and a significant portion of our teachers will be, put in disarray and their lives disrupted over what boils down to throwing a fit. And you look at these things and you say, okay, well, what does this accomplish? And it really accomplishes nothing except for them to say, we can take our football and go home if you don't want to play by our rules. And what's so significant about this is that if you look at the NEA's website and you go to the meeting they had in July and you look at the agenda for the teachers union that they all agreed upon, so the way that this works, the NEA is the National Education Association. It's the overarching organization. Every affiliate, which is the Arkansas Education Association and the Little Rock Education Association, all fall under the banner of the NEA. And so every member has to sign a contract that says they will support and put their dues toward the agenda that's decided on July. And I just want to read for your listeners a couple, two very significant items, and I'll give you the website here in a minute. But if you go to the business items, and you can just Google NEA July 2019 meeting and go to their new business items, and there's like 100 there's 100 plus of these things that they agreed on. But there's a few that are significant. So this is an item that they defeated. They defeated this item, that the NEA will rededicate itself to the pursuit of increased student learning in every public school in America by putting a renewed emphasis on quality education. NEA will make student learning the priority of the association. NEA will not waver in its commitment to student learning by adopting the following lens through which we will assess every NEA program and initiative. How does the proposed action promote the development of students as lifelong reflective learners? That item was defeated. So they're saying they're not going to do that. Here's what they adopted, Paul. Through existing media channels, the NEA will honor the leadership of women, non-binary, and transgender people and other survivors who have come forward to publicly name their rapists and attackers in the growing international Me Too movement. Furthermore, NEA will include an assertion of our defense of a person's right to control their own body, especially for women, youth, and sexually marginalized people. The NEA vigorously opposes all attacks on the right to choose and stands with the fundamental right of abortion under Roe versus Wade. That's the item that they adopted. So that's just two examples, and like I said, there are hundreds of things that were defeated that are student-focused and teacher-supportive initiatives. And then the ones that were adopted are these radical leftist political agenda views that they are taking dues from teachers in Arkansas and supporting, and all the while denying our students access to educational opportunities that would help them. This all boils down to teachers' butts in public seats so they can collect due money.
And those are radical left-wing ideas. I mean, since when did teachers, we don't, if you have the political views you want, but I mean, why politicize what is just supposed to be public education? I mean, abortion and this acceptance of transgenderism, which only a few years ago was actually in medical journals was considered a psychological problem. Now it's something that we have to affirm. I mean, come on, leave politics
and just
out
like
of
what
it.
you said, just like you said, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, your political views are your political views. This is America, and you should be able to hold whatever political views you want. But to tell our teachers that they have to abide by these political views, and at the same time negate the fact of things that would help teachers, then that's a real problem. That's something that is passes the veil of reasonability and common sense. I mean, if you're the teacher, go join the Democrat Party, or go join the. But this is the place for a justice for teachers, so that they can get support for their classroom and for the advancement of learning for our students. And they're saying, no, we're not going to do that anymore. what we're going to do is we're going to take your energy, your time, your money, and we're going to push our political agenda that has nothing to do with education, with teachers, or with students, and make you should see some of the stuff they're putting out, Paul. You probably have, where they're telling teachers that if you cross the picket line, if you don't strike, we're going to give you what they're calling the full transparency treatment. And what they've said is they're going to go through their entire family's stuff, everything that goes on, and expose whatever thing and everybody has that. Everybody has something going on with themselves or their family that they don't want out there on Facebook or Twitter. And so they're threatening these teachers and saying, look, if you don't strike, we're going to make sure everybody knows your business. I had a friend involved in this. Now, this is true. I had a friend involved in this, and her son had some challenges and some run-ins with the law and is getting help. And you know what? They went through and pulled his police record and put it out on Facebook and showed pictures and all this. I mean, they're just nasty, cruel people. And people say, well, I stand with teachers. Well, you know what? I stand with teachers, too. I stand with teachers who want to teach kids and who want to be part of our education system, not with teachers who want to advance any political agenda. Paul, I'm telling you, I wouldn't care if they were on the right doing this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not about education. If you want to participate in politics that has nothing to do with education, then do that. Do it on your time, and don't use our children and our families in the arguably the most fragile area of our state. You know, Little Rock, the school system there is rife with challenges. And that's why they were taken over in the first place by the state, because so many of their schools are in complete despair.
Yeah. We're talking with Laurie Lee with the Reform Alliance. We're talking about the fact that there's a one-day strike coming up on Thursday planned by teachers and support staff. And so, Laurie, my question is, where are they going? And is there anything that people out there that think this is ridiculous, could they show up as well? Are there counter-protests planned or anything?
Absolutely. So on Thursday morning, the meeting starts at 10, so I would be there around 9. There's going to be a meeting at the State Board of Education, and what we're hearing is that the teachers are all going to show up there, the teachers' union, I should say, and demand that the union be recertified. And I'm telling you what, our political leaders need some cover on this. The state school board, the superintendent, the governor, the commissioner of education. I mean, whether you agree with those people's, 100% agendas or not, this is about our kids. And so if they don't have enough right-minded folks going up saying, look, this is ridiculous, we just want our teachers to teach our kids, then as usual, the crazy will win. So, we're just asking people to show up. It will be behind the Capitol at the Arch Ford building. I will send you the address, Paul, so you can put it on your website and Facebook, but it's behind the Capitol building. It's where the State Board of Education always meets in the Arch Ford building on 4 Capitol, Woodlawn, right behind the state capitol.
Okay.
And we have a parking lot across the street from that, so if folks want to park there, they can get a hold of me, and they can just call my cell phone, 501-258-6353, and we can help get them parking spaces. But here's what folks should know, Paul. The Little Rock School District spends over $13,000 on each pupil. It has an 82% graduation rate. But with that, and people are like, oh, Laurie, that's pretty good. Well, I guess it's pretty good unless you're the 18% that's not graduating. Yeah. But of that 82% that graduate, only 20% of those kids can read proficiently, and only 31% of them can do math proficiently.
Wow.
So how are we graduating 82% when only 20% of them can read?
Yeah.
And the Little Rock, the union is saying, we want to keep control. They've had control for literally over 50 years. And what has happened in 50 years in the Little Rock School District?
Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing. So this whole argument is literally back to where we started this call, is 100% about political power, is about collecting dues from public school teachers, regardless of what their political views are, and to use those funds to perpetuate a political agenda that has nothing to do at all with education, with students, or with teachers.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I've got this photo in front of me. We support students first over politics, and that's what's being lost here is the idea of the mission to try to teach kids to read, write, and do math. And you're telling me they're not doing a very good job of that. So
they're not. And you know what? I wish you would put that photo on your Facebook, and everybody listening, I wish that they would put that photo on their Facebook and show some support for the teachers who don't want this to happen. Hey, let's be clear. The majority of teachers in Little Rock are not members of the teachers union. It is a very small number of radical leftists who want to keep using taxpayer money to further their political agenda, and that's what it's about. So we do support teachers. We support students. We think students should be the focus of education. I know that's a crazy idea, but wish that you would share that picture and then put out the information about the meeting on Thursday.
Yeah, we will. We'll post it up there right now. So I really appreciate it, Laurie. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, Laurie Lee, everybody with the Reform Alliance. We're going to take a break, reset, be back here in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South.
Money, power, prestige, essence, available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection, the fragrance of backroom deals, nepotism, the aroma of higher taxes, subliminal deception, deep state, ace, made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome, he-beaver and she-beaver. This is Conduit News. Thanks so much for being with us. We got a great rest of the show for you, by the way. Coming up at the bottom of the next hour, Jerry Cox, the president of the Family Council. We got some great topics that we're going to talk about you need to know about. Number one is the fact that Planned Parenthood, they've got efforts to recruit a public school person. That's interesting. There's other laws that Arkansas needs to pass concerning, we're going to compare situation in Arkansas versus situation in Texas. We've got the Arkansas Attorney General fighting for human life. That's really good. We have a baby that's been saved from an abortion in Little Rock, which is awesome, something to celebrate. And we'll talk about that and more coming up at 7:33 with Family Council President Jerry Cox. Real quick, the top of the show, we told you that the governor decided to go on the left-wing podcast, The Investigation, where he was which I really believe is, he was once again used. He was once again used to further this idea. Anytime that the left can get a Republican to even vaguely criticize the president, they do so. So do we have this cut here, Joe? I want you to listen to this part of the podcast where he says it was a, quote, very troublesome telephone call. Listen to this.
Negotiation, if you will. Those are things the American people may not see, right?
Well, they won't see the negotiations behind the closed door, but I think it's actually premature to know how they will address that. Whether there's any obstruction that may be articulated in an article, or whether there is simply the telephone call in and of itself and the concern about misusing the powers of the presidency. Let me make it clear that what I have seen yet is a very troublesome telephone call, but I have not seen anything yet that would lead me to believe you should remove a president from office.
Well, Governor, let me just ask you this. Is it something that...
They take that, that's the title of the podcast. The impeachment process for a sitting president can be a daunting task. Just ask Governor Asa Hutchinson. The title of the podcast, quote, a very troublesome telephone call. So this left-wing podcast gets to use a Republican governor to essentially legitimize the impeachment hoax into President Donald Trump. Now, the real gem here, just so you know, the real gem is cut two. Go to the actual cuts that we have. I want you to listen to cut two where he talks about the Ukraine. The question that he is asked, let me find it. Let's see here. The difference between today versus 20 years ago. He talks about the poll numbers. Does it make it difficult for Republicans? This is what Governor Asa Hutchinson says.
It does. I mean, it's all about the public attitude toward it. I think it puts the Republicans in a precarious position because as you go into the public hearings, it's not going to be enough to attack the process. I think you also have to address the substance of the charges, and you don't want to spend all of your time just creating a atmosphere that this is unfair. For example, I think as you go into the public hearing, there's one fundamental question. Why was there a delay in getting the funds for Ukraine? Well, the natural response is there's a national security interest, and there was corruption in Ukraine that the president wanted to address.
All right, corruption in Ukraine. What kind of corruption? Go to cut 3, Joe.
But when you look at that call itself of the president, how do you see that call?
Well, it's an unwise call. You should not. The president
Our
should
governor,
not
ladies
be
and gentlemen.
Addressing the political atmosphere in the United States of America or a political opponent in a call with a foreign leader. But substantively, you got to go deeper than that. There was corruption in Ukraine. It is a legitimate issue for the United States to be concerned about if there's corruption there.
Stop.
And so,
what kind of corruption was there? What kind of corruption are we talking about? This is so ironic that he would even address this with any sort of authority. Governor Asa Hutchinson, as you just heard there, is one of the few Republicans in calling for the probe of President Donald Trump in terms of, hey, we need to get all the facts. The call was unwise. You've heard it all. Now questions have arisen over whether Asa Hutchinson and his son, Asa III, have their own Hunter Biden-type situation. Was the Hutchinson Chinese connection a factor in the governor wanting to investigate the president and not Biden? Now, this story is based on before this particular podcast came out, just based on the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette reporting on the governor's reaction to the impeachment inquiry. But Governor Asa Hutchinson's son, Asa Hutchinson III, posted the photo on his LinkedIn account, and that's what started this whole rabbit trail. The fact of the matter is, Governor Asa Hutchinson's law firm, which he is the owner of, which his son is the managing partner, has the same Chinese communist companies that are coming to Arkansas that have received taxpayer dollars as clients listed as corporate clients on the website. Rise Ever, Dragon Woodland, and TY Garments. So for him to talk about corruption in Ukraine on this podcast. Now, I don't know when the podcast came out today, this far left-wing podcast. It came out today, ABC News podcast. You know, ABC News. We had it all 3 years ago. In the meantime, countless women have been victimized by Jeffrey Epstein and his pedophile friends. But we had it all 3 years ago. So anyway, this whole thing, you know, you're sitting there, you're going on foreign trips, you're going to China with your dad, who's the governor. It's discovered that you're representing TY Garments, and TY Garments has gotten taxpayer money, is in Arkansas right now. It is extremely disturbing. It is unethical, and something needs to be done about it in terms of the reporting, because you are hearing virtually nothing. You had 4 or 5 days ago KATV with the story, and now there's nothing. It was first, we broke it here on this program. Arkansas Times has reported on it. Finally, John Brummett addressed it over at Talk Business and Politics, but it's just little whispers here and there. It's nothing substantial. Why would the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette not cover this? Not a peep from them yet. You got to ask the question why. We've been asking forever, why China? Why is Asa Hutchinson seem to be obsessed putting all of his economic development eggs in the basket that is the Chinese Communist government, moving them into Arkansas? Why China? Well, we now have the answer. I mean, the answer is obvious. The governor's law firm that his son is managing is getting money, extra money from the Chinese. I say, well, the governor's, he's not managing it. He's just listed there as the owner still, and he's on the website and everything. Well, what's he going to do when he leaves office? He stands to walk into lucrative deals. They just opened an office in Madrid, Spain. They have an office in China. I mean, it's an international law firm. A la Clinton Foundation, if you really want to know the truth about it. It's what it reminds me of, setting yourself up for when you leave office.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
In Arkansas.
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, so there's a lot of news to get to. This is the last day to file. If you want to file for elected office, this is it. Last day to file. Also, it looks like the governor's law firm, the Asa Hutchinson Law Group, is going to be opening a new office in North Korea. Governor saying, I'm just joking. Sorry. It's not even my own jokes. It's one of our listeners on Facebook page. I just think that's so funny. And you see that, like, well, yeah, I mean, I know that Trump's got tough talk there, but, the governor and his foreign policy prowess thinks, the people in North Korea and, his son, they got to make a living too, I really honestly think that's the mentality that we're dealing with here. Like, how in the world can you, with a straight face, say that there's nothing wrong with your son flying to you with China, whether he paid for himself or not? That doesn't matter. Who cares? The issue is the governor's law firm with his name gets top billing. Top billing. His son is managing it while the father's in office, and the same Chinese communist companies that have made deals with ASA and the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, that have received taxpayer dollars awarded directly from ASA, are also paying his son via the governor's law firm to manage TY Garments, Dragon Woodland, and Rise Ever, all three Chinese companies that we're doing deals with. It is absolutely, like, how do you rationalize that other than, well, my son's got to make a living. He's got a lot of community service to do, or he's, got a lot of fines. Of course, he doesn't. He gets off on the DWI charges. Doesn't have to worry about those technicalities. Good lawyering, if you will. Still no word from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette on China and ASA. They'll report about the Hong Kong protester getting shot, but they won't report on our own governor and his son and his law firm. Talk business and politics tiptoed around it. Here's Roby Brock interviewing John Brummett yesterday, or it was posted to YouTube yesterday. Here's Roby Brock asking John Brummett about Asa and his son and China.
Asa Hutchinson's son, Asa 3, has some lucrative, apparently, contracts with some of the companies that have been locating from overseas to Arkansas. Is this a story that deserves more attention?
Yes, and I take that on myself. I mean, I haven't written about it, and you all have written about it on the website, but perhaps might look further.
I don't know where they have. I haven't seen that.
Yes, I mean, look, appearances matter. There's cynicism about government because everybody can look at things and say, see, that's nepotism, that's cashing in. There may be nothing wrong here, but here's my position. The governor is going on a trade mission that's going to China. His son has a law firm which does international business, and he apparently has Chinese clients that he works for. He pays his own way on the trip. I don't care. So what? He pays his own way. The problem is what's he doing on the trip, and is he benefiting from the trip, and is he benefiting from it even by paying his own way that borrows from the public role, public responsibility, public nature of his father's work, and that's a violation of trust, and it's just a matter of ethics. There's nothing. I mean, it's like, and I'm consistent on this. I've said, even though I think Biden's didn't commit any crime, Hunter Biden should not be appearing to cash in on his father, the vice. This is Biden too. It's the same thing. And if Donald Trump's going to make a big deal of it, and the Republicans want to bring Hunter Biden in to testify, then Asa Hutchinson shouldn't be allowing anything similar in Arkansas and in his trip to China. That's just my position. How hard would it be for a dad to say, son, don't take this trip with us. It just wouldn't look good. That's all I'm asking them to do, and it doesn't seem like that.
Stop.
It's that hard a thing.
And notice
to do.
how he tries to seem reasonable. That's all I'm asking him to do. Here's the thing, John. First of all, I'm just glad you're talking about it at all. Roby, I'm just glad you're talking about it at all, okay? The trip isn't really even the issue, though. You know, paying your own way isn't really even the issue. The trip, for some reason, and I still don't know why, the trip exposed the connections, because Asa Hutchinson III posted on his LinkedIn account a photo with him, the TY Chinese Communist executive in the middle, and his dad on the other, and they're having, and it just, then we're like, okay, well, my goodness, Asa Hutchinson III is working for his dad's law firm that he founded, and on the website, all these Chinese, that's the issue here. It's not, hey, stay home. I mean, if he had stayed home, we might not never known about any of this. Talking about this is Biden too. I said this last hour, but if Joe Biden had a law firm called the Joe Biden Law Group, and his son Hunter was the managing partner while he was vice president, and all these Ukrainian businesses were doing, can you imagine the outrage? It would be much less... you wouldn't have to follow the money as much, with Burisma and what happened to the $1 billion and all that other stuff. It would just be, pretty cut and dry. But, I mean, first of all, notice they don't really talk about how this is the governor's law firm. They don't even mention that. That's what really upsets me on this, is it's the governor's law firm. It's not, well, Asa III has clients. It's like, well, he's got clients that work for Asa Hutchinson's law firm. Couple of things. It's the governor's law firm. It's what I tweeted. It's the governor's law firm where he gets top billing to attract business and stands to collect. That's another thing that they leave out. He is using his dad's name here, and it's even in their self-described press releases where they talk about how Asa Hutchinson, who's governor of Arkansas and the founder of the law firm, and basically they say everything but we're really well politically connected. They carefully craft a language well enough to where that, hey, you want to do business with this international law firm. Who knew that Asa Hutchinson had an international law firm to begin with? I mean, when did it become an international law firm? That's the real question. When did the governor's law firm become an international law firm with offices in China and Madrid and North Korea? That's just a joke. That's just a joke. When did it happen? Can we chart the rise of it? Did they have offices in China and Madrid before Asa Hutchinson became governor of Arkansas? See, these are all questions that the media should be asking. But for some reason, you just like those Arkansas Economic Development Commission advertisements on your website, don't you? That's got to be what this is, right? The governor stands to collect. This is another thing they leave out. Why is this a story that needs to be talked about more? The governor stands to collect after he gets out of office, because you've used taxpayer money to make all of these Chinese foreign connections, not just China, but Japan now, India, the United Arab Emirates. All of these deals have gone to London, and you're setting yourself up to just walk back into your law firm and essentially have this international business that you've built for yourself. There may not be anything illegal, but good grief. Some people on Facebook are talking about, federal investigations. I don't know. Maybe there could be federal investigations going on right now. There needs to be an attorney general investigation into this. Because there's so many questions that need to be answered here. We need to know, for example, we need to know about the communication between the Asa Hutchinson Law Group and the state of Arkansas. But they've got so many firewalls. The governor has broad exemptions when it comes to freedom of information requests. He can always just claim, well, those are my working papers, and he doesn't have to say anything. In terms of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and those deals, they hide them all on the private side of the foundation. That's the same side that gives the Arkansas Secretary of Commerce a $50,000 bonus the last 4 years, Mike Preston. You get a $50,000 bonus. Well, it's not state money. It's from the foundation side, the private side, and they've got a firewall there. Say, well, we're private. We don't have to divulge the communications between the communist Chinese and us and how we're setting these deals up, or they don't have to divulge a lot of that. So it makes FOIA very, very difficult. Again, that's a story. That's a good story. Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I mean, any confidence, I'm serious, any confidence that I ever had that there were people in the media, the mainstream media, that wanted to speak truth to power, it is fast waning. I mean, I know the KATV story. That's fantastic, but that was 5 days ago now, and nothing. The only thing that you have new, if you're just joining us, the Far Left podcast called The Investigation. It's an ABC News podcast. ABC News, we had it all 3 years ago. They had Asa Hutchinson on, and it's out today. I don't know if it's out today because it was recorded yesterday. I would assume that it was recorded a few days ago. That's kind of how these podcasts work, but I don't know. But the title of the podcast, the ABC News podcast, where they interview Asa Hutchinson on the impeachment of Donald Trump, is, quote, a very troublesome telephone call, because that's how Asa Hutchinson described the call between the Ukrainian president and himself, and Donald Trump. A very troublesome call. He also called it an unwise call once again. They're asking, and it's got to be current, actually, got to be very current. It's got to be this week, because they are talking about the impeachment moving into the public face. So it's got to be pretty recent, which kind of supports my theory. Anytime there's negative attention in the press, mainstream, about Asa Hutchinson, there's always some Wall Street Journal article that drops, or there's some bogus poll that's like the third most popular governor in America, or he writes the op-ed for NBC News. It goes on the front page about Chinese investment and what a great job he's doing. All of that stuff. It always happens. If there's anything negative coming, there will always be a mainstream article that'll go national, that'll talk about how great the governor is. I've noticed that. That's a pattern. You've noticed it too, if you'll just stop and think for a minute. And so for the last couple of days, I Googled the name Asa Hutchinson, and what I find is the top hit on the news section of Google is the KATV article, "Is the governor's son benefiting from his position?" That is now the second hit, because the first hit is now this podcast, transcript, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, the investigation podcast. And you can listen to it. We played the clips for you last hour, some of those clips of what the governor said about Donald Trump. The very, quote, very troublesome phone call. That's what they titled it, because that's what the governor said. So anyway, man, this is another example of a Republican governor being used to make the president, or make the investigation, prop up the investigation. You know what I mean? You know, Mitt Romney. Oh yeah, very troublesome phone call. Very, very troublesome what the president did with Ukraine. And then Asa, oh, it's troublesome. You know, it's troublesome. Just say what you want. And then he had the nerve to address the corruption in Ukraine, by the way. Well, Ukraine, there was corruption in Ukraine. Well, what kind of corruption, Governor? What kind of corruption? ASAs are bored, by the way. ASA's China problem. That's what we got all the way. I mean, this is a huge story. This is a huge story. And the fact that the Arkansas Democrat Gazette so far has ignored it, aside from John Brummett, who's a columnist, he's an opinion columnist. I wonder if John Brummett, did he write about this today? I mean, I didn't see it in the paper. But I'm going to look. But I'm just curious if John Brummett does write something about it, will he get it public? I mean, where are they going to run it? I mean, that's something that I just feel like the fact that, the most recent one here, according to the website, is about Michael Bloomberg. Published today. All right, hang on a second. Yeah, so let me see here. John Brummett writing, make sure he doesn't mention it. Democratic presidential campaign, New Hampshire, Democrats, Bloomberg. It's unclear. Bloomberg, Trump, Biden. Bill Clinton. I don't see anything about anything about this. More on Bloomberg. Yeah, I mean, just on glance, let me control find on this and type in the word ASA 0. So I'm just curious. The fact that the Arkansas Democrat Gazette has not covered this is a huge story in and of itself. And the question now becomes, why have they not covered this? And if you follow the money, which is what everybody has encouraged me to do, people have told me, well, off the record or anonymously they've told me, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette can't afford to cover this story in any real way. So maybe they're going to eventually run a piece on it, maybe. But I'm told if the Arkansas Democrat, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm told if the Arkansas Democrat Gazette does run a story on ASA and China and the unethical behavior of the governor and his son and the governor's law firm and the Chinese communist entities, I'm told that if they do run a story, it will be extremely shallow. Extremely shallow. But the fact they haven't run one yet makes me think they're never going to. We'll wait and see. By the way, did you hear what Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, said? He compared the Chinese government to East Berlin and the government there. He said this in Germany on the anniversary of the taking down of the Berlin Wall. I'll give you that audio. We're going to break for 1 minute. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a second.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious...
This is probably the best point I've seen on Facebook all day, right here. I think this is...
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
It's a cold one outside, folks. Be warm. Stay safe. Watch out for ice. Watch out for black ice. Why does the ice have to be black? So the Christopher on Facebook writes, if Asa was truly a conservative Republican, the liberal media would be salivating or more likely foaming at the mouth. But he has connections. That is a very concise and accurate post. Breitbart News Headline, China tells Mike Pompeo to address his incorrect Cold War thinking. That's interesting. Well, what did Mike Pompeo say in Germany? Well, he said this.
He deployed U.S. nuclear missiles in Germany in an attempt to deter Soviet aggression. We shouldn't forget that Mitterrand and Thatcher didn't support reunification at first. It's not historic for nations to have differences in judgment at times. But as Reagan said, two things were absolutely non-negotiable: our collective freedom and our collective future. We knew that deep down, a system that was afraid of its own people could never be sustained. I believe that wholeheartedly today. We just didn't. Thank you. We just didn't know when it would end. Neither the lieutenant in the field, nor the president of the United States, nor the chancellor of Germany knew the moment that it would come. But we knew it was absolutely imperative that we fight for it. And I think there's a real lesson there. There's a lesson there for those of us who think that authoritarian regimes are destined to live forever. They are not. In 1989, on the day before George H.W. Bush's inauguration, Eric Honecker predicted the wall would stand in, quote, 50 and even 100 years, end of quote. I just left. I left in the beginning of October of 1989 to return to my next duty assignment. Had no idea that I left just a couple weeks early. German courage brought down 294 days later. It's made my visit to St. Nicholas Church last night in Leipzig particularly poignant for me. The German triumph inspired others to throw off the chains of the Soviet Empire too and secure their own freedom, their own future, their own dignity. So, here we are on this 3-decade anniversary, celebrating a monumental victory for mankind's natural longing for freedom. For this great city of Berlin, for Germany, for the German people, but also for the West. All of us had a moment after those days where we lost our way in the afterglow of that proud moment. We thought perhaps that the collapse of communism in Berlin and Moscow and the rest of the Eastern Bloc was the start of an inevitable trend worldwide. There were those who wrote about the end of history. We thought free societies would flourish everywhere, and in some places they indeed have. But we most importantly thought that we could divert our resources away from alliances and militaries and the things that had secured those very freedoms. Sadly, we were wrong. We were wrong about the human condition and the nature of the course that many countries might take today. Today, Russia, led by a former KGB officer stationed in Dresden, invades its neighbors and slays political opponents. It suppresses the independence of the Orthodox Church in Ukraine. Russian authorities, even as we speak, use police raids and torture against Crimean Tatars and Ukrainians who are working in opposition to Russian aggression. In Chechnya, anyone considered undesirable by the authorities simply disappears. In China, the Chinese Communist Party is shaping a new vision of authoritarianism, one that the world has not seen for an awfully long time. The Chinese Communist Party uses tactics and methods to suppress its own people that would be horrifyingly familiar to former East Germans.
Stop.
The People's Liberation.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Germany on the eve of the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. The Communist Chinese Party uses tactics and methods to suppress its own people that would be horrifyingly familiar to former East Germans. And our governor and his son are in China doing deals. And if you ask the governor about this, he has this vision, like Mike Pompeo says, we cannot treat China as we would want them to be. We have to treat them as they are. And Asa is just treating them the way he would want them to be, claiming that these communist Chinese chairmen of these companies are just like any other investor in the West. And they're not. They're loyal to the Communist Party of China, And they're not coming to Arkansas to be our friend or to help us. Back in a minute.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Freedom. A new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. We need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, folks. Hey, welcome back to the show. Thank you guys so much for being with us today. We're going to go now to the president of the Family Council. His name's Jerry Cox. He's back with us. Jerry, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing well. It's a little bit chilly, but hey, the sun is out. It's a good day.
You guys have got some great articles up at familycouncil.org, and I want to talk about a few of those. I see this one thing here where Planned Parenthood has put out a notice to try to hire a quote, sexual health education intern. What do you know about that?
Well, we know some about it. We need to know more. And here's the bottom line. Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest provider of abortions, the nation's largest promoter of abortions, is in some public schools doing sex education. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that you don't want the nation's largest provider of abortions teaching your 7th, 8th, 9th, 12th grader, whatever, sex education in the public schools. And, Paul, we have suspected that Planned Parenthood has been in some public schools, maybe here around Little Rock, for 30 years, almost, 20 or 30 years. Because from time to time, we hear reports about Planned Parenthood doing this or that at one of the high schools here in Little Rock. And so it's very troubling, and I think parents ought to delve into this a little bit and ask the administration at their schools, what kind of sex education, if any, do we do at the school, and who teaches it? And is, very specifically, are there any organizations that do abortions or promote abortions in any way connected with these programs? And I think it might be very revealing.
How does, in terms of other states, is there anything that the state could do to try to stop Planned Parenthood from trying to indoctrinate our kids in school? Are there other states that have tried to address this problem?
Let me tell you, yes, that's a great question, Paul, because when I started looking into this, I found out that our neighbors down in Texas, just this year, in fact, the law went into effect this past September, that says in Texas, no government entity that receives any kind of public funds in Texas will have any kind of connection, relationship, contract, whatever word is operable, with any organization that is a provider or a promoter of abortion. And it's very much the same language that we have used to prevent Planned Parenthood in Arkansas and elsewhere from directly receiving public funds. For example, they used to get grant money from the state here in Arkansas. And the legislature said, no, we're not going to give any grant money to anybody that does abortions or promotes them. So that door closed. And then the governor came along about a year later and said, you know what, we're not going to do Medicaid reimbursements to any organization that promotes abortions or does abortions. And that, of course, includes Planned Parenthood and any other organization that is like that. And so it would be quite easy for the state of Arkansas to simply pass a law that says, you know what, we're going to extend that same prohibition to any government agency here in the state. We don't want any tax money going to an organization that specializes in taking the lives of innocent unborn children the way Planned Parenthood, like they and others do. And so hats off to the people in Texas for doing this. And this law down there apparently is currently being enforced. I'm not aware that it's being challenged in court. So again, it would be quite easy for it to do that. But in the meantime, a school board could issue a ruling that, you know what, in our school district, if we do sex education, we're only going to do business with these kinds of entities that do a responsible sex education program. And a school board could do that right away. And in fact, I believe there's enough leeway that a school superintendent or school principal and the teachers could just sit down and say, you know what, these are the kinds of curricula we're going to adopt.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of leeway there if people just want to do that. But I'll pause and give you a chance to ask a question. There's another thing I want to talk about with the Department of Ed and what they're doing is troubling.
Okay, what is it? What tell us what the Department of Ed is doing.
Here's what happened during the legislative session. Department of Education rolled out a piece of legislation that was veiled as a sex education. Oh, no, I'm sorry, a health education.
Okay, hang on one second, Jerry. We kind of have a bad connection. You just kind of okay. I can hear you better now. So go ahead.
Okay, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's try this again. Well, during the legislative session earlier this year, the Department of Education rolled out a bill that was supposed to be based on some new health standards that they were doing. And it had to do with, like the usual health things like eat right and exercise and those kinds of things. But kind of hidden down in that bill was some sex education requirements, and it was a mandate that all the public schools in grades 7 through 12 statewide would have to do a certain type of sex education program in all the schools. And when we got to looking at that, we said, you know what? The way they worded this, that's going to be Planned Parenthood, and people like them. And it's going to require the schools to do that. And so we and other lawmakers like Representative Mark Lowry got out in front of this thing and started talking about it. And I was appalled that some of the Republicans on that committee, who hold themselves out to be very conservative and pro-life and all these other things, just barreled forward doing this really awful bill. And Representative Lowry from Maumelle, in fact, introduced an amendment and said, okay, well, you can pass your health education bill, but I want an amendment in here that says that you won't include any organization that does abortion or promotes them as the teacher of any of this sex ed. And you know what? That committee rejected that amendment, would not approve it. And that showed true colors, I think, on the part of a bunch of people, that they were willing to go out here and embrace such an awful thing. And so we fought it really hard, along with some other individuals that are around the state of Arkansas. And finally, after weeks out there fighting it, the bill died.
Wow.
But that's so troubling that I just believe that there are people inside the Department of Education who either knowingly or unknowingly are still trying to open the door for Planned Parenthood-type organizations to come in and do these programs in our schools with our children. And I might add that there's a responsible way to do mentoring and risk avoidance and all that with kids. I think they need some help in that area, but they don't need Planned Parenthood in here holding their hand and leading them down the abortion path.
Of course
That's
not.
just wrong.
Yeah, and I think everybody, I mean, the vast majority of Arkansans, should Planned Parenthood have access to our kids' public school system? Absolutely not. Should any pro-abortion organization have? No, absolutely not, because, I mean, you know, they're promoting murder. I mean, they're promoting more of a careless lifestyle that's going to lead to pregnancy. I've seen some of the pamphlets. I mean, what they're giving to folks. It's absolutely terrible. They don't need to be in charge of our sex education. We're talking with Jerry Cox. He is president of the Family Council. Now, you guys have got go folks. I want you to go to familycouncil.org and check out some of these great Arkansas stories about what's going on. There's another one about the Attorney General Leslie Rutledge fighting for human life. What can you tell us about that one, sir?
Well, I tell you what, as far as these laws are concerned, and as far as we're concerned on the pro-life side, Leslie Rutledge is our hero. Our Attorney General right now is defending a total of 8 pro-life laws in federal court. And there are 3 that, in particular, that were passed just this year, where one is it requires abortion doctors to be an obstetrician gynecologist. You can't have a dermatologist or a podiatrist out here doing abortions. We said if you're going to do an abortion, you need to be an OBGYN. Well, guess what? Planned Parenthood and all those guys, their type, went out here and challenged it in federal court. And guess what? Judge Christine Baker here at the lower court struck it down. And then they challenged Senator Trent Garner's bill that prevents abortions solely because a child has Down syndrome and, going to be handicapped. And so we said can't do an abortion just because of that. Well, guess what? They challenged it, and Christine Baker struck it down. And then you have a really good bill that rolls back the gestational age at which a woman can receive an abortion. We with Robin Lundstrom, state representative, rolled it back to 18 weeks. It's 20 right now. We rolled it back 2 weeks. And guess what? They challenged it. And so all of these were struck down by Christine Baker back last summer, and now Leslie Rutledge has added those 3 good laws to the list of a total of 8 laws that are currently before the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the next higher court. And in the past, the 8th Circuit has reversed Judge Baker, and I believe they'll do the same with some of these laws. And as soon as they do, And as soon as these laws go into effect, then you're going to see the number of abortions go down. And it's not just about preventing a woman from going out here and having an abortion per se. It's about preventing the abortion industry from preying on that woman who is scared, feels like she has nowhere to turn, doesn't know what to do, and they take advantage of her, and she makes a decision that maybe she'll regret for the rest of her days. And there are better ways. There are pregnancy centers out here who will help a woman every step of the way, and they do it every single day. And what we want to do is see those women make the better choice of either keeping their baby or putting their baby up for adoption. That's the best thing to do. So these laws shepherd women in that direction.
Absolutely, and the AG is doing a great job in representing the will of the people and defending those laws. Now, speaking of preying on women, P-R-E-Y, what about praying for women, P-R-A-Y? This headline, familycouncil.org, baby saved from abortion in Little Rock. What can you tell us about that, Jerry?
Well, there's an effort called 40 Days for Life, where people go out and they stand in front of the abortion facilities around the country. It's a national movement, and they pray. They don't holler at the women or jump in front of cars or protest with big signs and all that stuff or do anything that would be crazy or embarrassing. They just go out there and pray. Well, studies have shown that if there are people standing out in front of the clinic praying, that about 3/4 of the women who go there to get an abortion will decide not to go through with it. And there are all kinds of reasons for that. But once in a while, some of the women will actually come over and talk to the people that are praying. They'll seek them out. And just the other day, this happened out here at the clinic in Little Rock, the abortion facility here, where a woman came over and talked to the people that were out there praying, and she decided that she would not abort her baby. And these stories are from all over the country, not just Little Rock. And in fact, it's estimated that the 40 Days for Life movement has probably saved around 16,000 unborn children since it was started back, 10, 12 years ago. And so it's a really good thing for people to do, because if you really believe that inside that building there that they are taking the lives of unborn children, then it's not too much for a person to stand out there and pray that that will not happen.
Yeah.
And it's made a difference. And so we've actually seen situations where people that work in the clinic would be convicted of what they're doing, and they would just say, I'm not doing this anymore, and they would just get up and quit.
Yeah.
And so it's creating a culture of life, which is good for everybody.
Can I ask you one more question on another story that's up at familycouncil.org? And the reason I ask this is because I saw a report on the U.S. Senate confirming Arkansas's Lee Rudofsky over at the Arkansas Times. And if they got a problem with it, I got to imagine it's a pretty good thing for the state and the country. So what can you tell us about Lee?
Well, let me tell you, Lee went to Cornell, and then he graduated law school at Harvard. I'm sure he is not qualified to be a judge. That's ridiculous. But they act like that somehow he's this bumpkin out here that's terrible. And the man is brilliant. In my opinion, he could go higher than just being a judge here in the Eastern District of Arkansas. And Lee is a great guy. He was on staff at the Attorney General's office here and worked vigorously I might add, successfully defend some of the pro-life laws that Christine Baker struck down. And it's not that he's going to go out here and be a biased person, but Paul, I find that if they'll just interpret the law properly as it was written, then these good laws will stand. What we're dealing with are judges that lean it the other way, and they just say, it restricts abortion. Well, I'm going to strike that down. I don't even need to read that. That's pretty much seems to be the attitude. And Lee looks at these things and say, you know what? Whether I agree with the law or not, personally, here's what the law is. This is how the Constitution says we do this. And I think he's a very straight shooter. But see, that's not what most liberals want. They don't want a straight shooter, a constitutionalist. They want somebody that will legislate from the bench the way they've done with Roe v. Wade and these other bad rulings. And I figure they're pretty sure that Lee won't do that. So that's what's got them upset.
The website, folks, familycouncil.org. We've had this great interview, Jerry. I appreciate it. Really comprehensive about what you guys got going on. And can't wait to do it again sometime.
Hey, we'll look forward to it. And you guys have a great day.
You too, Jerry. God bless. You see the website right there, folks, familycouncil.org. Those stories we talked about and more up there right now. Check them out. And we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News, The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator. On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. Just if you're joining us, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Wrapping up the show here. We still have no word from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette in terms of, I don't know why they haven't reported at all on the fact that the governor's law firm has clients that are the same Chinese entities that the governor has given taxpayer money to. Now, I understand that, people are going to say, well, Paul, he's not running the law firm. You're right. He's not. But his name is still on it. If you go to the website, last I checked, you scroll over attorneys or lawyers, and there's his name. It's his son, Asa III, who is managing this stuff, going on trips with him. It doesn't matter if he paid his own way or not. The fact of the matter is, you have the governor's son who is doing business with the same communist Chinese entities that the governor is giving your taxpayer money to. And so when they even say, well, Asa paid his own way on the China trip, when they even say that, well, Asa III's law firm, the governor's law firm, paid their way, and the taxpayer money that's been given to the Chinese companies could very well be used. I mean, it all goes into the same pot. So you're taking money from the taxpayer, you're giving it to the Chinese companies. The Chinese companies are then giving it to the Asa Hutchinson Law Group. And then Asa III goes on a trip with his dad or is at the state functions and everything else. I mean, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? See, these are all questions that the mainstream media should be asking. And if Asa were a conservative, they'd be foaming at the mouth to do this, but they're not. A question like this: did these communist Chinese companies, did they pay the governor's law firm before or after? Okay? If that's what I got to know. Were you paid before or after? Right? Which came first, the chicken or egg? Did you get the it doesn't really matter, it's still unethical, but did you get the communist Chinese deals here in Arkansas and then or did you pay the governor? See, I've been saying this for a while. When the communist Chinese come in to whether they come into Zimbabwe or any country, they grease the skids first. Well, here's a way to do it. We're going to contract the Asa Hutchinson law firm. We're going to enrich his son, just like Peter Schweitzer's book talks about, just like Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. And now all of a sudden, Rise Evers in Jonesboro, T.Y. Garments is in Little Rock, and we got the Arkadelphia or Chinadelphia Sun Paper coming soon. I'm surprised Sun Paper's not a client of the governor's law firm as well. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter if the governor isn't the specific counsel for T.Y. Garments. It's his law firm. His law firm stands to profit from this. The governor's going to walk into that law firm after he leaves office. It's the governor's law firm now has an international footprint. When did that happen? Now, I don't know, but again, mainstream media asked the question, when did the governor's law firm become an international operation, having offices in China and a new one that opened last month in Madrid, Spain? These are questions that you have to ask. And they're not. And there needs to be an investigation. The Attorney General needs to investigate this, if not the federal government itself. Here's your meme of the day. Donald Trump Jr., courtesy of tears_of_snowflakes. When you go on The View to promote your book titled Triggered, and they proceed to yell at you for the next 20 minutes, proving the point of your book. We'll post this up at the Twitter feed at Conduit News. Arkansas, be safe. Let's hope more mainstream media outlets cover the corruption with China and ASA.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement.